Welcome to Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I am joined by Kevin Graham, where we'll be discussing a whole host of subjects. First and foremost, obviously, will be the victory over Ross County over the weekend up in the north. Before we do that, we were really saddened to hear of the passing of Des McElroy. You may have seen Des with his daughter just a few weeks ago on A Celtic State of Mind, talking about his love of Celtic Football Club, and Des very sadly passed away after a brave battle against cancer. It got him the fourth time, so all our thoughts and prayers are with Des's family and friends at this time. He was a very popular Celtic supporter, so please keep him and his family in your thoughts and prayers. I'm going to be joined just in a moment by Kevin Graham, and welcome Kevin to the show. What kept you?
Not just traffic, Paul. Just the usual family life traffic, just stuff like that. But I'm here now.
Well, listen, it's always welcome. It's always a welcome sight to have Kevin Graham in A State of Mind studios. So, as I was just saying there, Kevin, Des McElroy, our thoughts and prayers are with Des's family. He joined us 3 weeks ago and very sadly passed away yesterday. We will be talking about Des's favourite subject, the famous Glasgow Celtic. First and foremost, tell us about that woeful first half performance at the weekend.
Well, I can't believe the traction that comment got.
I can.
Especially, I mean, you look at the first half. We went 1-0 up via the penalty kick, and we started off okay, but the formation didn't work for large periods of that first half, especially defensively. For me, when you're having a look at it defensively, and this is just me looking at it without an analytical mind, a tactical mind, the fact is Ross County looked like they could score any time they got near to our box. We had no defensive cover on either side. And after the game, and this for me backs up my point, after the game, Neil Lennon says they had to adjust it at half-time. We were a bit off it in the first half. Shane Duffy says we were a bit off it in the first half and we had to adjust stuff at half-time. Our goalkeeper, Barkas, says it today. We were a bit off it. We're going to get a wee while to get used to each other. We were a bit off it in the first half. Every report I've read about the game says Ross County were unlucky, not to go in at half-time, at least having scored once. And for me, the fact is, if you look at that first half, if your goalkeeper is man of the match or is the player of the match in that first half, it shows that there's something wrong.
So what was wrong then?
The full-backs, the wing-backs. There was no defensive cover whatsoever. Our back three were constantly exposed in the first half. Second half was completely different.
So what was actually changed? You're saying there about, I mean, we've gone in 2-0 up at half time,
which is great, which I did say in my message, which I did say in the comment, which I says fantastic result, but I've still got, I thought the performance was woeful in the first half. Certain aspects of the performance
woeful
was woeful.
Do you not think that was a wee bit strong?
Mournful. It made me worried. So woeful means so many things to so many different people. Well,
when I hear somebody calling a performance woeful, it's normally meaning that it was poor. I wouldn't have described it as poor. I mean, with regards to the change at the back, I think it's for the best long term, playing with the three at the back. When we were approaching the game last week, Kevin, we were speaking about how we would line up if we had three at the back. It seems kind of obvious to me, but what I've been thinking since then, if we're going with three, which I hope we will, for the best part, you've also got to have the adaptability and the personnel to go back to a back four at some stage. There's going to be occasions where you need to shore up the defence. We're playing in 5 different tournaments this season, as I keep going on about, and there's going to be occasions maybe in Europe away from home and you maybe go to a flat back four for periods of a game. So I think now, when you're looking at that centre half position, and that was the best three, if you ask me, that we started with against Ross County. You've also got good coverage with El Hamid, who I rate highly. I think he's cool as a cucumber, a wee bit too cool when Ferencvaros scored that second goal. And I was critical of him because I think he should have defended that better. And you've also got Beaton, who I think you mentioned last week, we don't even comment about Beaton when we're looking at midfield options these days. But he showed in the international game, particularly the one against Scotland, that he's competent there. He's playing at a high level there. So we've got good cover at the back. I guess this leads us on to one of the other points I've got here in relation to the fullbacks. So you reckon they didn't have enough cover, obviously, with the two wing backs, as we call them, in Forrest and in Frimpong. It was good to see Frimpong again, offensively. I think that's obviously his forte. It definitely is Forrest as well, but Forrest is a hard worker. What was done, do you think, then, to change it at half time, whereby it certainly did seem to solidify it in the second half?
I think maybe they just got a bit tighter with what they were doing, and they got more used to what Ross County were doing to them. I mean, what Ross County done to them, I was out just before the games kicked off, and I was listening to Pat Bonner, and Pat Bonner predicted how Ross County would play, and they would get joy down the flanks, and they got joy down the flanks in the first half. I watched the highlights of Ross County against Dundee United a couple of weeks ago, and we gave up as many chances as what Dundee United did against Ross County in that first half. So at that point there is a problem. So whatever the management done, maybe it was a switch with the centre halves. Maybe they just get more alive to the fact is they're going to be wide open. But don't get me wrong, we looked like we could score any time we went forward as well.
That's the beauty of that formation,
that's
isn't it?
the beauty of that formation. But there is going to be times where our keeper's not going to pull us out. I mean, even when we went 2-0 up, they always say the third goal in a game is dangerous. And I fear if Ross County would have got that one goal, then we could have been on the rack, because we did look that open.
I don't think I was overly, harsh on your comments on a personal level, Kevin, because if you win 5-0, to be honest with you, if there was any issues in the first half, they've been ironed out quite clearly.
Definitely.
But when you're playing with three at the back, and again, I'm not going to get into the tactical element. The simple, basic, fundamental thing that you would need to do with three at the back is one of your central defenders is looking after the left-hand side of the pitch and vice versa on the right. And that's obviously how you line up. So Forrest and Frimpong, they're not going to do the whole shift themselves up and down the right and the left. And that is something that the defence need to kind of battle with. They are going to have to cover the left and the right. And then you've also got cover from some of the other midfield players. And, we know how good defensively Callum McGregor can be. And Scott Brown, in his advancing age. We talk about him as if he's old, Kevin. He's a lot younger than me. And these people can also cover that area of the pitch. So really, I think it was just adapting to not just the new formation, but the fact that you've got a new pivot at centre-half as well, who we'll go on to speak about in Shane Duffy. It's easy for me to say with hindsight, how could it be woeful? We won 5-0. There was moments in that first half where you felt Ross County were opening up the defence far too easily. But thankfully, between the three defenders in Barkas, and obviously with Lenny's instructions at half-time, they were able to overcome it. And hopefully in the coming weeks we stick to that. I mean, we're going out there on Wednesday night. We'll talk a wee bit about St Mirren on Wednesday. Another away game. Do you go out and still play with three at the back? I would.
Definitely, but I think where the choices need to get made on Wednesday night is not the three at the back, it's not the formation, it's probably the personnel in the wing backs and in the middle of the park, just with the number of games that we've got coming up. It was really interesting and really good to see Lennon using all his subs, giving guys run out, giving guys game time into the legs. So I think he's got a decision to make in the wing backs and also in the centre midfield area. For going forward, managing the squad.
Well, that's it.
And he is going to be guided by numbers. He'll be guided by the sports science. He'll be guided by the coaches. He'll be guided by the players himself. I mean, you look at Brown. He took Brown off.
He looked quite happy to be coming off.
He did look quite happy to be coming off. Is he looking forward to going to Paisley on Wednesday night? I'm sure he is. I'm sure he would love to play, but his body might be telling him something else. The science guys might be telling Neil, John and Mr. Stratton.
Gavin,
I couldn't remember.
Seeing how you were going for Christian names there.
they might be telling him something else. They might be saying, look, we've got European qualifier coming up as well.
Yeah.
We've got a tough game at the weekend. So we need to start utilising the squad. And
We do.
And it might be something, yes, you don't want to change the team after a 5-0 victory, but there could be a reason for changing it. Not the formation, but if that's a formation, it was really interesting to hear Lennon saying that's his preferred formation after, for what we heard, that wasn't his preferred formation, and nothing personnel-wise has really changed in the wing-backs area to say it's all of a sudden going to become more defensive solid. So he says that's his favourite formation, so you're going to say yes, that he is going to use it. But what does it give us? It gave us brilliant forward play. Ayeti dropping deep.
And we've
Edouard
got
dropping
those
deep.
players that thrived.
Cham was absolutely immense just with those extra bodies round about him. The movement that we had. I mean, as I have previously says, we did look like we were going to score any time we got near the Ross County box. And that was fantastic to watch. Being a Celtic fan, that's what you want to see. But sometimes you just don't want to see yourself being cut open quite easily. And there is stuff that we'll need to work on. Lennon did say that, Duffy says that, Barkas says that. So I don't think I was saying anything wrong. I'm quite happy that there's guys who have made a living in the game, have agreed that the first half wasn't great. But then I put myself out here to be ridiculed, and if people want to ridicule
Nobody's
me,
ridiculing you,
and
Kev.
there was people agreed, and there was viewers agreed on the chat at the exact same time as me as well. And I can show you loads of messages as well on my phone with folk going.
You've come in with evidence.
Yes, I've came in with evidence,
Kevin,
to back up my.
There will be no need for that. That's why we're here. The comments are flowing via Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and obviously, looking at that first half, I could see that there was flaws, but at the same time, you've got a defence blending, moulding, getting together, understanding a new goalkeeper. And I think we now have the three centre-halves. If we can keep the three fit and the goalkeeper behind them, for me, there was loads of promise there. Barkas made a lot of good saves. You know, he's coming for criticism. Let's talk about that. People who are, as you say, making a living by making these kinds of comments. Kevin, they were criticising Barkas. We said before the game it seemed a bit unfair that he all of a sudden became a target. How impressed were you at the weekend with Barkas' performance?
Unfortunately for Barkas, we had to have a game when we were open for us to actually see what he can do. It's no the Fraser Foster situation where we knew what Big Fraser can do. We needed Barkas to have a game where he had stuff to do, and he done it very, very well. He's very light on his feet. He's very agile. He doesn't like palming things very much. He's got a good catch of the ball as well. He looks a very technically easy on the eye goalkeeper. There's nothing flapping about him, and he seems very calm. He moves the ball far quicker than Craig Gordon and also Fraser Foster. He seems to have more what could you say, an outfielder's vision when moving that ball quickly. But what you want to do, you want your goalkeeper to save goals and to save you points. And on Saturday he shows that he's possibly got that in his locker.
I mean, I felt that the criticism was unfair.
It was unfair.
To Barkas, they went over the top with that.
Definitely.
Right? The Ferencvaros game, we can always return to that. This is going to be a game we'll probably return to throughout the season because it was so disappointing. And Ferencvaros beat us on merit, so I can't sit here and say we're better than them. But there's been occasions in the past, Kevin, Cluj, AEK Athens, where you see how that team progresses, you see how Celtic get it together in the subsequent months, and it's a regret that you've been put out to a team like Ferencvaros, Athens, etc., because you actually believe Celtic are a better side. So that's disappointing. I don't blame Barkas for the second goal in that game, although I think he should have done better at his near post. That's the only criticism I've made of the new goalkeeper. And I think that he had a good performance at the weekend. A big part of that for me is you've got two ball-playing centre-halves in Julien and Ayer. We now have Big Duffy in there, who doesn't care about shoving his own players at the road just to get to the ball, as he showed when he scored the goal.
And his own player claimed for a penalty.
Yeah, brilliant. Love it. But Shane Duffy, we'll chat a wee bit about Shane, but before we do it, I've got to say, growing up, you had your favourite Celtic players, didn't you? And I've says to you before, the first Celtic player I ever wrote to was Davy Provan, and he sent me a signed photograph, which I still have. And there's a few others that you always got a response, which was great. So I've got signed pictures of Lex Bailey and all that at home. However, I would say if I was to pick a player at the moment at Celtic who I have an affinity with and who I would say is my favourite player, it's not always on ability, right? It's Leigh Griffiths. He's the guy that I want to see in the hoops, scoring goals, doing what he does best. And I've got a lot of sympathy for him, everything that's happened, everything he's come through. But we're still not seeing him in the squad, right? He's not on the bench at the moment. He's obviously recovering from the calf strain that has kept him out of the action for a few weeks. When you're looking at that lineup, Edouard is the absolute star. Everybody knows that. We'll talk about some of the interest that's flying around Edouard at the moment, Arsenal being the latest suitors. You've then got Ajeti, who seems to have got a wee bit fitter over the international break. He looks a player. He's got the finishing quality of your typical 12-yard box striker, a la Gary Hooper. He seemed to be working quite well back defensively, which it was great to see. And then Klimala comes on, the man that you call a Legia Warsaw Ultra. He misses one, he scores one. He blesses himself. Everybody's happy. So your three strikers score a goal. But where is our Leigh? Because he's the boy I want to see coming off the bench. I want to see him back in amongst the action. Is there a place still? Do we need the four strikers? I would say yeah, particularly when you're playing two up front. At the moment, your first choices are Edouard and Ajeti, and that's just basically based on form and the fact that they're playing and they're scoring. Then I still think, even though Klimala's working hard, and even though he's coming in and scoring the odd goal here and there, and he's not getting many minutes, so to be fair to him, I still want Griffiths to be in there shouting for a jersey. Are we going to see that? Is that on the horizon?
Every week it goes by, and every week that he doesn't get anywhere near the squad and he doesn't seem to be getting anywhere near fitness, it seems further and further away. When you look at the strikers that did come on at the weekend, I mean, El Houssi also ended up playing through the middle.
El Houssi.
I'm going to keep.
Can I just say, for the benefit of the people that are listening in Malaysia and that it's El Yunusi.
El Houssi.
Just in case they didn't speak rap block.
As I said to you before, it's my mind now. Somebody pointed it out to me. My mind just subconsciously.
I didn't just get you in here so I can slag you off,
I'm beginning to feel that way. I'm beginning to feel like.
Can we just call him Mo?
Mo. We'll just call him.
Oh, maybe
Mo.
No, eh?
No, we're past that.
All right.
We're past that.
All right.
I've said to you before, my therapy sessions are talking about Mo Johnston on this podcast.
Oh, dear.
So
you brought him up again.
I've brought him up again.
Right.
That was you brought him up.
So Mo,
he played through the middle as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're saying that you need four, there's your four there. We were interested about what Mo's best position was. And did we find it on Saturday? Coming off as an impact sub, as a second striker.
Well,
you look at the skill and the technique he had with
the
goal that he scored against Northern Ireland in the middle of the week.
Mm-hmm.
You look where he came to prominence with us when he played for Molde, scored 2 goals, playing through the middle. He had a partnership with Ajeti at Bal. So have we maybe just been trying to fit him in the wrong position? But getting back to Leigh, I don't see him being even that fourth choice striker. I think he'll be, by the time we get to October the 5th, Leigh Griffiths will no longer be a Celtic player.
Right, and this isn't just for the basis of an argument. I'm going to disagree with you. Now, I know all week last week I was preparing Celtic fans for the return of ball and goalie, and that's not going to happen. But I think the Leigh Griffiths situation is completely different. Right, I think he will return as a Celtic player. I can't see Celtic selling him to another Scottish club simply because there's not another Scottish club could afford Leigh Griffiths. And obviously you then think, well, what about a loan deal? What type of club would Leigh Griffiths fit in well at? It needs to be one of the top end clubs, obviously. Hibs are flying. He's a Hibs boy, we know that. Would it be a good fit? Probably, but I don't want him playing for Hibs. I want him playing for Celtic. I still look at Leigh Griffiths as a Celtic player. I think we've come this far, Kevin, he'll get back in that side, and I hope that's the case. I don't want, and by the way, I take on board what you said about El Yunusi, because I've been standing up for El Yunusi all season. Perhaps his best position isn't out wide left, and I certainly don't think that he showed it this season out there. But when I look at El Yunusi in the centre, I look at him more in your Ryan Christie stroke Encham kind of role, behind the strikers, rather than a second striker. And I know he's played there. So El Yunusi, I don't think that makes any difference to the fact that we definitely need 4 strikers, so if you're playing 2 up front. Injuries, form, everything else. And I still think Leigh Griffiths, I still want him to be part of a historic season. And I'm not getting over sentimental about it. There's no reason why he can't return to the fold. And actually, there's no reason why Rogic can't return to the fold now that his transfer's broken down as well, Kevin. So there's 2 guys that, if you were to bring the 2 players into this squad, you'd be happy. We've got them there. Let's utilise them.
Definitely, but the weight of evidence is against what we want, what yourself want, and I'm maybe dealing with what I see with the evidence provided. And the evidence provided
is that on your phone as well?
Huh?
Is that evidence on your phone as well?
No, it's just made up in my head. The evidence that I've completely made up and fabricated points to that Thomas is no got a future at Celtic.
Do you refer to all the Celtic players with first names these days?
I know them all, eh?
Thomas. It's like when you see people referring to Peter Lawwell as Peter on Twitter, and you think, all right.
I've seen him referred to a lot worse on Twitter, actually. And,
so you don't think Thomas Rogic has a part to play? I don't know why I'm calling him Thomas. Tommy Rogic has a part to play at Celtic Park.
I'm starting a trend.
You don't think he's got a part to play?
No, I think he won't be a Celtic player by October the 6th.
Right, we've got 5 tournaments to play for, 5 trophies to play for this season, right? 2 Scottish Cups. You're going to need a deep squad. You definitely are. You look over the last few seasons at the injuries that Celtic have had. There's been players that have been out of the game for months on end. You're going to need quality and depth, strength and depth. If, for example, before the transfer window slams shut, Tom Rogic and Leigh Griffiths goes, if Celtic were to replace them, like for like in terms of quality, they're big buys. Why not keep what we've got? We know what they can do. It's not as though they're over the hill. Tom Rogic's not played as much as he should have done in the last 2 seasons. And particularly under Neil Lennon as it happens. And Leigh Griffiths, for other reasons, hasn't played as much as we would have liked. But if you get those 2 players firing on all cylinders, Kevin, they could be great additions back into our squad. Rather than trying to find another player, £2-3 million, however it might be. I see those 2 as being big losses if we let them go.
You maybe
to the deeper, wider squad, I mean.
To the deeper, wider squad, I get your point, but you maybe answered your own argument there by saying if we can get them firing on all cylinders.
And why shouldn't we?
That is a massive if.
Leigh Griffiths came back
based with the evidence that we actually have.
Well, he came back last season.
18 months.
Came back last season. There would have been no one more frustrated than Leigh Griffiths in that Celtic side when the season was curtailed early, because he started scoring goals again. He was back in his side. He was developing a partnership with Edouard. This season, you ask, what exactly has he done wrong? No, seriously, what's he done wrong? So he doesn't go to France. He stays at home for further conditioning work, as did Tommy Rogic, the bold Thomas, and various other players. It was there maybe five players left behind to now, and we know, because of the people that we've spoken to in the show, that he worked hard during the period when the rest of the squad were in France. There was then a picture that appeared on social media. He's in his own home, I believe, at his own partner's birthday gathering, crucified, because it was Leigh Griffiths, crucified, right? I would like to believe, and I'm not daft, right, that he has got a calf strain, that he will come back, and he will, at the moment, he'll be the fourth choice, and that's simply because what the other 3 are doing, Klimala included, and then it's down to Leigh Griffiths to become second choice, and then start pushing for the jersey. I'm not giving up on Leigh Griffiths yet.
As I said, And I can understand where you're coming from. It's a nostalgia. You love Lee like one of those wayward wee cousins that you meet at weddings every so often. What you been up to this week? And he's a cracking wee guy. He gets his drinks at the bar, but he goes out and steals motors and stuff like that.
Lee Griffiths, just for the benefit of the tape, is we're not accusing him of stealing motors here, Kevin. I love Lee Griffiths because he's ability. More than anything. I said I have an affinity with him. Yeah, I do. I love the fact
I have an affinity with him because he is a fan. He understands what we go through. Because he is dyed in the wool, used to go...
I love the fact he's a working class laddie. Mm-hmm. He's come through, housing estates like you and me.
There's no many of them left.
He wasn't born with this opportunity. He created the opportunity through his hard work and his ability. He was never done any favours. That's what happens, and he's worked his way into the point where, the pinnacle probably of his career, or I would guess, would be the 2 goals against England. No one else in Scottish football, no other Scottish footballer could have done what he did that day. No other Scottish footballer. Now, since he's been at the side, we can't even take a corner. Now, McGregor's taking the corners on one side, the other ones, they're playing it short. Lee Griffiths could take a corner for either side. The guy, for his talent alone, Kevin, I want to see him back. Now, let's say he's 90% fit at the moment. We can get him 100% fit. He will score goals. He will cause problems on the park, the right problems for other opposition teams. It's like, El Yunusi might be a forward. We've got Lee Griffiths here. Lee Griffiths, we know he's an out-and-out goal scorer. That's what he does. That's what he thrives on.
For me, there's a difference between getting him fit and getting him firing on all cylinders. There's 2 differences there. There's a mindset difference, and this is where, and I don't want to say that in a bad way. Well, would Lee Griffiths sit on that Celtic bench knowing full well that he's 4th choice?
I think that would fire him up.
Would he react to that?
I think positively.
You're taking the gamble on how does he react to that? He could go in the huff.
I don't think he will.
He might not, but he could.
Because...
this Celtic Football Club is the biggest club that Lee Griffiths is ever going to play for. He knows that. Mm-hmm. He knows that he's now 30. He knows that he's now in the last chance. I don't know how many last chances that one guy actually needs. And Neil Lennon, John Kennedy and Gavin Strang have got to rely on everybody in that squad. And the evidence, either made up in my head or the number of appearances that they've made over the last 18 months, points to the fact that Lee and Tom Rogic can't be relied on. And I'm sorry to say that. It pains me to say that. My heart, it feels like somebody's putting a dagger into my heart when I'm actually saying that. But sometimes the coaches are not going to make any decisions like on nostalgic, romantic-based notions, which we can sit here and fire out. They're going to have a look at hard facts.
Yeah, you can look at facts. You can also look at instincts. You can also look at attitude. Tom Rogic's 27, right? Lee Griffiths is 30. They're not over the hill yet.
No.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of football to be played by both of them. If I was a manager, I'd do 2 things. I would urge Tom Rogic to retire from international football, and I would urge Lee Griffiths to retire for social media. That's what I would do. And concentrate on your game for Celtic, 100% committed to Celtic. And I'm not saying that they're not, but I mean, we both know that Tom Rogic's trips to Australia and back certainly haven't helped his Celtic career.
No.
Right? And what you get there is you get 2 players who can contribute to 5 tournaments that we're in this season. And if we want to, let's say we want to win a treble, right? Or we want to win a treble plus complete last season's treble. Lee Griffiths can contribute to that. Tom Rogic can contribute to that. Now, at this moment, there are no first picks, nowhere near it. How would they react? Well, we've seen how Lee Griffiths has reacted already. And if you look at last season's situation with Lee, with the mental health issues, right? I think the club have been supportive of him. I think he reacted well to that and he got back into the side. This season's a wee bit different because that, as far as I'm aware, hasn't been cited as a reason for Lee not being in the squad. If it's just a bit of discipline with the social media thing, if it's just a wee bit of a lack of fitness, you can overcome them, Kevin. You can overcome that. You know, that's not something, that's not career threatening. Mental health issues is a career threatening injury is. But what, as far as we're aware, Lee has suffered from this season is a calf strain and being a wee bit unfit when the club went to France, and then the social media indiscretion. That's it. That can be overcome. Tommy Rogic, he was almost out the door. He's maybe had a second thought about the fact that sounded like semi-retirement to me, where he was going.
Going to the league that he was going
He
to
can
go to.
contribute a lot more. And I'm not being too over sentimental or romantic about thinking back to 2017 and all the rest of it. He's only 27.
He is only 27, but maybe more so Rogic than Lee Griffiths. But we need to balance the books. We've spent quite a bit of money. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. We've got no fans in the stadium. We've like got 56,000 season books, or how many that we've sold, but we're still missing match day revenue. The club has still taken a massive hit to the finances, and these books are going to be balanced somehow. And when you're looking at that, when you look at the midfield options that we've got, then a player that's played 32 games over the last 2 seasons is one of the first names to go out the door, no matter if they can contribute or not.
And they've tried to put
him out the door.
Yeah.
And for me, it could maybe be that Lennon's saying, "Oh, we're welcome back into the squad," is just basically a manager paying lip service, because a manager can't say in public, "This guy's got no future at this football club," because the player's value then goes down. I mean, you look at that team, it started on Saturday. Ayer, Encham and Eddie. The 3 of them might not be there by October the 5th.
We'll talk about that. We'll definitely discuss that, Kevin, because the prospect of that is unthinkable in my view. But we will talk about it because it is a possibility. Let's have a wee look at some of the comments that are coming in on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter. And first up is Gary Doonan. Welcome back. You're commenting via Facebook. Gary, it's always great to hear from you. And what Gary says is, hope so, with the amount of games and competitions to play. And another striker comes in handy if a 3-5-2. Over 2 years ago, we had 3 when it was only 1 up. So I do think we do need the 4. We need 4 strikers you can rely on. Would Lee Griffiths be happy being 4th choice? I don't think he'd be 4th choice for long. I think that's what I'm coming to. I don't think he'd be 4th choice for long. I've written Klimala down here because I want to discuss Klimala in more detail. I'm not giving him a hard time. I think I might have been quite harsh on him previously, Klimala, because I didn't think he was up to the standard. I still don't think he's at the level of Lee Griffiths when it comes to being a striker. Klimala. I know he's worked hard. He's well conditioned. He's trying. He's coming in. He's answering the call and he's chipping in with a few goals. Is he a better option than Lee Griffiths if Lee's fit? No chance.
I'm not going to disagree with you there. Klimala's 22, hasn't got Lee Griffiths' experience. He's never scored 40 odd goals in a season in the Scottish Premier League. Of course, looking at it on paper, that Lee Griffiths is a better option than Patrick Klimala, but at this precise moment in time, Klimala's done nothing wrong. He's came in.
Missed a few sitters.
Lee Griffiths has missed a few sitters. Eddie's missed a few sitters. Strikers miss sitters.
I know that.
That's part and parcel of being
20 minutes to go against Rangers at Ibrox, 1-on-1 Klimala. Are you backing him?
Oh, aye.
You think?
Definitely.
Right, we'll see. Might happen.
Definitely.
It might happen. And I'm not criticising him. I'm looking at the whole squad. I'm looking at how we can improve. There's been a few departures over the last few weeks. A couple of young guys have gone out, Kevin. Ballincolly's gone out. And did I think we were going to transfer him? Well, he's got a good move for himself to Istanbul.
Definitely.
He's playing in the Champions League.
He's got a great agent, His agent's worked wonders there.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
He's done well. But it does raise a question, the fact that we've only got 1 left back in this squad, and we're talking about personnel, we're talking about having the depth of squad that could lead you into 5 different competitions this season. We're going to need it. We've seen it already. You know, flip a coin, we don't have a striker for an important game in Europe. That's how quickly these things can turn on their head. There might be another argument that we need another goalie. You just never know how that's going to work out. We've seen situations, even this week, where people need an emergency goalkeeper. We've seen that in Europe over the years, Kevin, where clubs need an emergency goalkeeper. You'd be far happier with 3. We've only got 2. You're looking at the left-back situation. We've only got 1. Right-back situation isn't much better, to be honest. You know, people still say Frimpong's right-back. I don't think he is. El Hamid's a right-back. Anthony Ralston is still at Celtic. He's a right-back. Is he an option?
Doesn't he look that way?
It doesn't seem to be part of the squad, the first-team squad. So there's an argument, if such a thing were to exist, that you could buy a fullback who can play either side. It's a wee bit harder to get these days, isn't it? But Bolingoli, he's gone. I was getting everybody to prepare for him coming back in hoops. It's not going to happen. What do we do? Where do we go from here? There's been a few names linked to Celtic over the last few weeks.
I agreed with you. I was preparing myself for him to come back as well, because, as I said last Monday when I was in, you could have got to a point where you were trying to sign left backs and you eventually get so far down your list that the one that you're going to bring in is not at the level of Bolingoli. And I know people out there will go, well, he wasn't at a very good level anyway, but that's not the point. The point is that you would get to the point where the coaching staff would be looking at a player going, well, we've got a better player sitting there. And so, with him going, you've got to say that the club are confident of bringing in another left back.
Yeah.
Are the club confident of bringing in their first choice left back at the top of that list? I watched PSG v Marseille last night, and Bakar didn't play. They played the Spaniard Bernard. That was a very interesting game. I'm sure quite a lot of the viewers actually watched it. There was 5 sending offs in it and a bit of a stramash at the end.
A stramash. Good word.
And Neymar was one of the people that got sent off, which is always pleasing to see.
Especially when we've mentioned Ralston in this show.
Yes.
His wee pal.
So PSG have only got 2 left backs. So Bakar might be having a look at that going, I've got a chance here of getting game time at PSG. So he might want to stay there. I watched Liverpool against Leeds on Saturday night as well, and the boy Douglas wasn't in the squad, wasn't even on the subs bench. So what does that say about his chances of getting any game time at Leeds United? Even though Beasley has been quite open and honest that he says he wants the player to stay. He's an important part of the dressing room, but he wasn't even stripped for their opening game on Saturday night. I still like Greg Taylor. I do. I would have him in the team on Wednesday night to add that a bit more defensive solidity.
So you'd still play with 3 at the back, though?
I'll still play with 3 at the back, but I'd put Taylor as the left wing back.
Would you?
I didn't think we were as open down the right hand side as what we were down the left hand side. So we are looking for another left back. For all we maybe want to sit here and say that Frimpong is a winger, the coaching staff see him as a right back, as a right wing back. So we've got to count him as a right wing back, a right back. El Hamid's there as well, so we have got 2. If you're looking at that squad, we signed Frimpong as a right back. So you've got to see that we've got...
Just because we sign him as a right back, he's far more effective as a right winger.
Maybe that's why we see him more in the right wing back role than what we do as...
His defensive qualities, Kevin, and I don't
Do you think his final ball is there for to be a winger? That was the reason that he was converted to a right back in the first place.
I think when you look at his assists, if you look at his assists against his appearances, then the question answers itself. I think his assists, you're looking at the amount of times he is flighting a ball in, and that's maybe making it more kind of like noticeable when he plays a bad ball or he can't get the ball in. I don't think Taylor's final ball's there. From an offensive,
for at least one game this season, the game against Hamilton, where he had 3 assists. I would look for my wide men to contribute with goals, and I know Frimpong's maybe scored 2 or 3 in his time at the club, all been tap-ins. Strangely enough, when you look at him to actually push Forest, you look at the number of different type of goals that Forest scores. I don't see that in Frimpong yet.
He's definitely not the finished article at his age. I was actually surprised he started, to be fair.
I don't see that in Frimpong yet. I don't see that finishing ability in Frimpong yet.
No, that's fine. My concern really is his defensive. Yeah. That's defensive.
So you would looking if you're bringing in what would be a third choice right back?
Well,
or would you be looking for a first choice right back?
I would always go for a first choice. Always go for a first choice, because if you're bringing somebody in just to make up the numbers, then you'd need to look at what you've already got there. It's like when we're speaking, for example, we're speaking about Rogic and Lee Griffiths. The question would be, could you get better? If you let them leave the building, could you actually bring in better players? This would be my question. Lee Griffiths currently is the fourth choice striker, and that's because he's not been playing. Not because I think he's the fourth best striker, right? If he goes and you bring somebody else in, are they going to make more of an impact than what Lee Griffiths would? My answer would be no.
If Lee Griffiths goes, I'm going to agree with you, and this maybe is going to sound like I'm flipping here. If Lee Griffiths goes, you're bringing in a fourth choice striker who's young to be developed. You're getting somebody on loan that a club's sending to Celtic to be developed, hopefully, for them to use. And like PSG sent Edouard to us to develop him, but then decided that they weren't going to need him, and we were willing to pay quite a bit of money for him.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a first choice right back, then you're talking about we're going to need to pay quite a bit of money.
I'm more concerned about a left back because we only have one. Now, we could argue the toss about Frimpong, whether he is or not. Yeah, he's an option there because that's where he played his earlier part of his career. We only have one left back. You've got to buy in another left back.
And I'm sure the powers that be at Celtic Park know that as well. And I'm sure they'll be working tirelessly how to try and get their first choice.
There will be a list. Ben Davis is getting mentioned. Preston North End, Ben Davis.
They want quite a bit of a wedge for him, don't they?
What, they're looking at 5 million or something like that?
For him. Again, it's the economics of Scottish football. It's the economics of Celtic. If you're spending £5 million upwards on a player, you're then saying that they're their first choice. I mean, you look at Ayeti. Now, Ayeti's looked like he's going to prove that he's going to be worth a starting jersey. But I says to you a couple of weeks ago when we were sitting in here that you've paid £5 million for a striker. He's not going to sit on the bench with the wage and that he's on. Unless we've upped the game and we're now looking at £8-9 million players as guaranteed starters and £5 million players to sit on the bench and to improve the squad. And I just can't see our financial model being like that.
Well, could you? I'll take you back a few days to Neil Lennon's comments in relation to the transfers, and it sounded as though he was quite happy with what he had. We've then sold Bolingoli. We've freed Daniel Church. So he's going to have to go back on that point, isn't he?
Is this just Lennon, what he usually does with the press? When they ask him about transfers, he's usually a bit flippant and a bit cold and a bit evasive. He doesn't really like speaking to the press about transfers whatsoever. Is he really going to come out and say that he's desperate for another 4 or 5 players? Which then any club that you then go to automatically puts the price up because they then go, you're desperate for another centre half, you're desperate for another left back, so that means we add a couple of million onto the price for this player because you need this player. Right, it's very clear for anybody who's got any mind on football whatsoever that we need another left back, but it's the type of left back that we need. How many? If the left back is going to play, if we see it as a first choice left back, if we see it as 2 competing left backs, it's really we do need a left back, but where that left back is and who that left back is and what level that left back is going to be solely down to finance for me, because I think we see Taylor as our left back. I think we're looking as cover for Taylor. And I can't see us shelling out an awful lot of money for cover. It would be a loan deal. It would be a loan market, and now that the English clubs are now back, and you're seeing those and their match day squads, the picture might become clearer of who is going to be our left back. But I do expect us, no matter what Lennon says, I do expect us to actually go into the loan market soon, now that the big leagues are coming back.
We were talking about left backs. We were talking about Greg Taylor. Yeah, he's a first choice left back, but we definitely need backup. And it all depends on who's available, Kevin. You can go out there, you can buy a backup player, but if someone else becomes available and they're a better option than Taylor, then he plays. But we definitely need to strengthen on the left back. Anywhere else in the pack now that you still think we need to bring someone else in?
I'm more looking at the defensive options. I probably agree with you that we maybe need a third choice goalkeeper or a second choice goalkeeper. That budget is not going to stretch to Fraser Foster coming back on loan, I don't think. I think we've spent a big part of the budget on the first choice goalkeeper, which is Barkas. And now what's happened to Fraser, as we all predicted was going to happen to him. I can actually see him going elsewhere, and I can't see him coming to Celtic, but I can see us bringing another goalkeeper on loan. Now the English leagues are back and the European leagues are back. You can see how the squads are going to develop over the next few weeks.
Yeah. And
you'll see the players that will become available for loan. I don't know if the sound was on when I was talking about Barry Douglas, but he wasn't in the Leeds squad at all on Saturday night. Backer for PSG last night didn't play either. One of the strange things, one of the players that was linked to us under Brendan Rodgers, Timothy Castanga, actually signed for Leicester and played for Leicester yesterday.
What was the fee?
I'm not 100% sure because I didn't realise he had signed for Leicester. But you're talking about a fullback who could play either side. He was one that could play either side. But then Leicester got a fair amount of money for Ben Chilwell, who's ended up going to Chelsea. So I found that I actually did have a little laugh to myself when I saw Timothy Castanga actually starting for Leicester yesterday. I was like, oh, it's well seen Nicky Hammond's still got that book of names. And it's really quite funny, and it shows you how football works, and it shows you how these managers follow players, or they have the same personnel or the agents that they use to follow players. That the boy Justin on the left and Castanga on the right were both linked to Celtic when Brendan Rodgers was the manager. It shows you how that happens, and it shows you that these players that keep on coming around all the time. It's the same with Ayeti and Mo for us as well.
Well, I'm glad that we stuck it out with Ayeti because he looks like a quality acquisition. I just want to speak a wee bit more about that. We've spoken about Klimala and Lee Griffiths, so let's talk about Ayeti. He's beginning to show us what he can do.
Definitely. I was well impressed with his work rate at the weekend. He liked to roll up his sleeves and get involved in the unglamorous side of the game as well. I mean, his reactions in the box are quite unbelievable. He's that sharp. He's only got one thought in mind when that ball broke to him at the weekend. That was to get a shot on target. It was the same against Motherwell the week before, same against Dundee United. As soon as he gets half a sniff in the box, he's shooting. And that's really different for Edouard. Edouard doesn't seem to have... Edouard's got tons of great stuff in his locker, but that striker's instinct doesn't seem to be there. How many times have you seen Edouard dance into the box and you've went like that, shoot, let it go? Where Ayeti, and also when we spoke about Lee Griffiths, his first thought at times is, I'm having a bash here.
Yeah.
And that's what Ayeti seems to have as well.
Just that instinct.
Just that instinct. He uses his body shape really well as well. We've spoke about that before. He gets his cell in front of defenders, and he's quite difficult to shake off the ball. I'm
going to say here actually that the reported fee was $5 million, wasn't it?
Yes.
I think that's a snip.
At this precise moment in time, obviously you want to see him over the course of the season, but seems strange to actually say this, but maybe this is because I've been moulded into the Celtic model, but if he has 2 or 3 great seasons up here, that 5 million is going to seem like a snip with the fee that we'll get for him.
Yeah, Stevie Boy agrees. He thinks Ajeti will get better and better, whereas William Kennedy reckons that Ajeti reminds him of Lee Griffiths. And Frederick Yamstam, he's a solid wee guy, low centre of gravity, striker's instinct. He does look a solid wee unit, doesn't he?
Definitely. You mentioned Gary Hooper earlier. Scott McDonald as well had that wee low centre of gravity as well. Douglas had it.
He did.
Douglas had it, but then Douglas progressed to be a all-round footballer that could probably have played anywhere on the park.
He used his backside to great effect. On Facebook, there's a point here. Our bench on Saturday, Kevin, was excellent. If we get another left back in, I'll go as far to say it's one of the best transfer windows I've seen, and I'm coming up 39 and a Celtic fan all my life. I didn't mention it. I threw it out there the other week there. Is this the best transfer window? And what I meant there, I mean, the transfer windows have only been in place since about 2002, 2003. And we've had some solid transfer windows, let's be honest about it. But, you know, when you're looking at the calibre of player that we've been bringing in, it's been a very good transfer window. We're going to talk about Shane Duffy in a few moments there. But I still reckon we need to bring in another left back. Now, Lawrence Zed Reid confirms that Leicester paid 21.6 million for Castagna.
Gee, wow. And we wouldn't pay 8 for him?
Was that
6
what
or 8?
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons, well, one of the reported reasons that Rodgers was unhappy that we wouldn't pay £6 or £8 million for him. 21 million.
And that was at the time of the McGinn saga as well, wasn't it? That was the 2 players that Rodgers wanted.
I mean, what did they get? Did they get 51 million for Chilwell from Chelsea? So then they've went and nearly spent half of it on his replacement. That's phenomenal. That is a phenomenal amount of money. I mean, they paid £8 million for Justin from Luton Town, the other fullback as well. So, I mean, that was out of our price range, but he was linked with us as well. I think he was one of the names on the famous leaked document.
Oh, the leaked document. We'll come back in a moment to English football transfers, because we will be speaking about Edouard and some comments that have been made by yet another ex-player who was quite disparaging of Scottish football, I would say. Paul Cockwell. Love the show, Paul, and I'm a Hibs fan. Well, welcome to the show, Paul. You're welcome. I mean, we've had a lot of fans from other teams getting involved in this show.
I know.
A lot of fans from a certain team get blocked immediately because of whatever they're saying certainly isn't football related. But you're always welcome if you're going to come on and join in the chat. So welcome to the show. The other striker we haven't spoken about so far is Edouard, who has been linked now to Arsenal. That resulted in Gary Breen, who comments in relation to Scottish football. There's no decent strikers in Scottish football, Kevin. There's no strikers in Scottish football who would do a job in the glorified EPL, according to this guy. And I think what you're looking at here is Odsonne Edouard, right? He's by far and away the star man in Scottish football. We all know that. He's probably been in that position for at least 2 seasons. Now, we're coming to that point when even the most avid of Celtic fan realises that a player gets to a point where it's perhaps that time where he moves on, because the club have probably promised him that at the initial stages of signing him. We're going to put you on a platform. You're going to do what, let's say, Moussa Dembele did. You're going to do what Virgil van Dijk did. And they use it as a bargaining tool to get young players to come in. I mean, and it's worked well. It's worked very well for Celtic. We're getting to that stage. I don't think we're there yet with Edouard, to be fair. I still think he's going to finish the season with Celtic. I think that's what made it difficult for us with Tierney. I don't think we're ready for Tierney to leave.
No, not at all. But Tierney was in a different situation. Now there's 2 sides to this story. And I don't think it's for us to go into the 2 sides of the story. I'm sure there's going to be some of the viewers will comment that he was forced out the club, and there's other sides of the stories where he's had a look at the number of injuries that he's got, and he's been offered an absolute life-changing amount of money and a chance to go to a good Premiership club which has now been proved. He's got 2 winners' medal. He's got an FA Cup winners' medal. He's got a Charity Shield winners' medal. And he's playing in the Champions League this year for a decent-sized English club who had a good result at the weekend as well. But I don't think we were ready for Kieran Tierney to go.
No.
I think we thought he would have hung about until after this season. But football doesn't work like that. Football players sometimes don't see things the same as what fans actually see it. We see some things as black and white at times, and we make decisions based on fan point of views rather than based on... we're getting asked to comment on situations and on players' financial situations that we'll never be in a position to be. We're getting asked to make a decision. What would you do if you were in Kieran Tierney's shoes? Well, you'll never know, because you weren't in those shoes being offered what he was being offered, being told what he was being told.
Well, it's a good point, Kevin, because we do fall into the land of fantasy when we are talking about, why leave for Arsenal when they're, offering you 8 times the wages. Well, it's one of these things that what attracted you to the 96-year-old billionaire? They say that to the young model. Well, money talks. Have the people that are saying this ever been offered a job where they could double their wages? It doesn't happen that often.
No.
Right, in the real world, outside of football and stuff like that. And if someone dangles that carrot in front of you, and you've got a future, and you've got a partner and a mortgage and kids, and they've still got to consider their own financial future. So the Kieran Tierney thing at the time, I just don't think Celtic fans were ready for it. I think it was disheartening to hear his comments about maybe having a fear of returning to Celtic Park. I think everybody would welcome Kieran Tierney back, and he's always talking highly of the club, and I wish him all the best. Edouard, I think Celtic fans have always realised that this kid that we got from PSG was going to develop. He's developed maybe beyond anyone's kind of imagination. He's for me, he's actually a better striker than Dembele. When Dembele left Celtic, I think Edouard's actually a higher standard of player. If anyone had, any kind of foresight whatsoever, they'd be buying the two of them and playing them together, right? But I really don't think Edouard leaving is an option this season, because he is a star man. We've heard interest in Ayer, we've heard interest in Cham, and as much as I regard them and rate them so highly, I don't think the thing would crumble without them. I think if you remove Edouard for that team, it's your star man. And that would be my biggest issue with that.
There's a psychological blow as well, losing Edouard, that we might not recover from. Us as a fan base, it could cause a lot of bad feeling between the fan base and the club, especially the money men in the club. And we'll go back to Brendan Rodgers. It's always about the Holy Trinity. We all need to be on the same board. We all need to be on the same level. We all need to be wanting the same things. And if all 3 of us are together, then we're virtually unstoppable.
The Holy Trinity.
And I think selling Edouard could put a massive chasm in that. It could take us a little while to get over it.
Well, a lot of players, a lot of fans speak about Kenny Dalglish's departure in that kind of terms, in those kind of terms, Kevin, back in 77. People struggled to get over Charlie Nicholas leaving in 1983. And, it's because they were the star men of their respective Celtic sides. Edouard is our top player. He's our top player. He's the guy that, you could put him up against any team in Europe, whoever we are going to be drawn against, and he wouldn't look out of place. He's one of those. So we're not ready to lose him, and hopefully we don't. He's inevitably going to be linked to top sides. The minute anyone gets linked to an EPL side, you get players like Gary Breen who comes out and makes these comments. When you think about Edouard and what he could do, when you look at what I've just said there, I regard Edouard as a far more complete player than Dembele was when he left Celtic. The one thing, and I've said this before, that Dembele done better was he was a better defender than Edouard was, right? He was a different type of player, so it's maybe unfair, but they're both French, they both play centre forward, so I'm going to compare them. Now, if Dembele, 2 years at Lyon was to move to the English League right now, would he be a success?
Yes.
100%.
100%.
100%. How much would it take him to the English League from Lyon?
50, 60 million.
Right. So we're now in a situation where we've got Edouard, and we know he's developing, and in a couple of years he'll have developed even further. If we sell him, right, and some of the fees that have been quoted, because people don't regard Scottish football in great terms, then you're looking at a fee of beyond anything we've ever received before. So the highest fee we've ever received is 25 million quid for Kieran Tierney. If Edouard was sold for 25 million, would you feel hard done by as a Celtic fan?
Yes.
Yeah. 30 million.
Yes.
Right. And then you're starting to push it up from there. So
there is always going to be a Scottish tax. There's always going to be a Scottish ceiling on what you're going to get for a player. What Arsenal are doing now, they're looking at what they've got at Kieran Tierney. And they're looking at, 25 million is an actual steal for Kieran Tierney. So what else has that club got? Because have a look at our record. Dembele, Wanyama, Foster, Van Dijk, all guys who had to go to, the ones that went to England went to Southampton as a stepping stone.
even Ki Sung-Young, the career he had down south,
that he had down south as well. So now Arsenal are now looking, going, by the way, we can get a guy who, if he ends up down here or ends up going to France, is going to cost double or maybe 3 times the amount of money, as long as we give him 6 months to bed in. Because there is going to need to be a bedding in period. It is a higher standard of football. And when we were interviewed by Arseblog about Kieran Tierney going down there, and that was one thing that I emphasised, that he wasn't going to go down there and be a success right away. He was going to need to 6, 7, 8 months to bed in, get used to the game, get used to the intensity, before he would be a success. And he got a bad injury right away when he went down there. He got a shoulder injury. Mm-hmm. But now they're seeing the player that I always knew, always predicted that he was going to be on, never always knew. But now they're coming back to us looking at Edouard the exact same. They're looking and going, he's the star man. There's a Scottish ceiling what we'll pay here. And
what is the ceiling?
I reckon the ceiling's 30. 30 up front.
With add-ons. We've got a comment in here from St Rock Development. Welcome to the show. You're always welcome. From St Rock's, our friends of the Candy. And he's talking about the Tierney deal changing the narrative. You're talking about the Scottish football tax. It's probably a good way to describe it, Kevin, whereby there will be a limit that these clubs go to. Do you think 30 million is a bit low for Edouard? And by the way, I'm not pitching that we should sell him, but there's a price for success. And if you're looking at 5 tournaments, as I keep banging on about, the most important one of which is the league for 10 in a row, right? In order to win at least 3 of them, because I think if you win any more than that, it's beyond anybody's wildest dreams. To win at least 3 of them, you're going to need players like Edouard, and if they're going to be sold, it would need to be for an astronomical amount of money. And I don't think £30 million is that figure.
I don't think £30 million is that figure this season. But if he signs, next year he goes into the last year of his contract. Next year, I'm sure. I might be wrong on that. Somebody will probably pull me up on that. And
people didn't pull you up if they disagree with you, Kev.
And if that's the case, then 30 million is a fabulous figure for somebody in the last year of their contract.
You would still, if you were to accept that, then you're pushing for a big sell-on.
Big sell-on fee and big bonuses. Mm-hmm. You're looking at that deal to nudge upwards of 40 if they give you £30 million up front.
People think you're
I know people are going to say I'm selling them short, but
what I'm going to say is, if the comment I'm about to make, people will think that your opinion is worthless because the guy plays in Scotland. Dembele and Edouard, there is a potential that those two, at some point, will lead the line for France. Now, people might say no chance because you've got, and they'll reel off a dozen players that they reckon are better French options, but you look at where Dembele is at the moment. His next move will be the English League.
Yes.
Right? The transfer fee we're talking about will be between 60 and 80 million quid. because we've already seen £60 million figures. I think Celtic have got a sell on at 10%.
10%.
Now, if Edouard goes straight to the EPL, that's fine. But if it goes sideways, and I say sideways, it's hardly a sideways move, but you know what I mean, to get back to that level, and they two guys are playing in what is deemed as one of the best leagues in the world, the EPL, at some stage, then they'll be up for French international honours, won't they? I mean, at the moment, you've got Edouard ripping it up every single time he plays for the under-21s. His goal-scoring record for France's underage teams, from right back to, I think, 16s forward to the 21s, if it's not a goal a game, it's not far off it. And that's international level. These guys will make the step up eventually. They might be 27, 28 because of the talent that French football produces. But if they two guys are playing up front for France, and we think back to a time where we had both of them, and we let one of them go for 20 and one of them go for 30, you know, it'll be a huge regret for me.
It will be a huge regret, but then that's what, at that point in the career when they left us, what they're going to, we can't control what's going to happen after they leave us. And there is, we do feel like the Petri dish of where they develop to a certain point, then they must go into clinical trials somewhere else. And we
I love the way your brain works, Kevin.
we're just the lab, and once it goes into the wide world, which is better leagues,
we're like the chart making hit factory, you know, Stock Aitken and Waterman. That's us. Give us a tune, we'll turn it into a hit, and we'll sell it back to you.
But do you know what I mean? We seem to be at the bottom of the chain, and my thought personally was that Edouard would make the sideward step to France. He would go to a Champions League team in France. But my main worry is the fact that Arsenal are in the Champions League. They've already got French players there. They'll be talking, and he may see Arsenal as a decent move, and you don't want him thrown down in tools if he doesn't get a move by the time we get to October the 1st.
Do you think he's got that in him?
I would hope not.
I think his attitude's been brilliant since he came to Celtic.
His agent might have it in him, and that's a bigger worry.
This down in tools thing worries me, because we've seen it. You know, you've seen it with Van Dijk at Southampton and Boyata at Celtic. You saw it
with Van Dijk at Celtic as well.
Yeah.
When we got put out the Champions League with Malmo, he basically told the club he wasn't playing for them again. That came from somebody in the club.
You going to name your source, Kevin? Right.
No.
Sorry? No, I didn't think you would. Okay, no,
but
that's...
anybody that was at the same meeting as me will know who says it.
All right, well, I didn't get invited to these meetings. I don't have a AAA pass, as some people think I do. I certainly do not. I didn't get invited.
I've no longer got one.
That's why you're allowed to tell us all your secrets. Okay, so here we go then. A couple of other points to discuss. We've not spoke about the big man enough, Shane Duffy.
Yes.
It was Shane Duffy that Gary Bean was commenting about going up to Celtic, playing against lesser opposition. There's no decent strikers in Scotland, which got me onto my Edouard point. Edouard is a striker who could go down there, play for Arsenal and score goals. Absolutely no doubt about it.
No doubt about it. No, and if any English Premier League, we're friends with Arseblog, we're friends with the Anfield Rap, and we've been on their podcast quite a few times.
And they're very respectful about Scottish football.
They are, and they come to us for our wild opinions. And we're truthful. We say to them that they're missing tricks in Scottish football. There is players in Scottish football that can walk in and play in the English Premier League.
Remember we were speaking about Van Dijk. The Liverpool boys came up to interview us about Van Dijk, and I had interviewed Ronnie Dyler just weeks before it, I think.
That's right.
Ronnie had been speaking about Van Dijk's lifestyle choices that he had to sort out, and the guys were surprised at that, weren't they? They were like, what are you talking about? I says, well, Georgie Lyle, the porn star, etc., and they had no idea about it. So I think Van Dijk had a lot to learn. Can players become complacent, Kevin, if the game appears to be too easy for them? That's sometimes a concern that I have for the top quality players. Van Dijk scooshed it most weeks. Does that complacency creep in eventually? Is that what we're going to maybe see playing on Edouard's mind at a certain point? I still believe he's going to be here for 10 in a row. I think he's going to see out the season. However, it's a complacency issue. These guys want to develop and move and progress all the time. And I think Edouard, in the back of his mind, because I'm not criticising Scottish football,
No.
I know the EPL's a higher standard. Of course it is. You're coming up against higher quality players more often. There's no doubt about that. Of course, it's much better standard.
It'd be ludicrous to say anything different.
Of course, I mean, we're realists, Kevin. We know that. But in terms of the level that Celtic are playing at or trying to operate at on a European basis, then I still believe we can produce the players, like you say, and then they go for big money. But it needs to be the right money. Now, there's a point coming through. The points are coming in very, very quickly, so apologies if I've missed any of them. But there was a point coming in saying that if you had to allow one of these guys to go to balance the books, because that was a point you made earlier, Kevin, the player would be Ajer of the three mentioned. You know what I'm going to say here? You're going to have to throw Christ into that mix as well, because Christie's not signed a new deal. He's maybe looking for a move. I wouldn't like to lose him.
I wouldn't like to lose him anyway, but as well. But as you say, there's circumstances where things end up out of your control, and sometimes for the greater good, these decisions are made. Because you can't get into another Boyata situation, and we got our fingers burnt with Boyata.
Yeah,
I mean, we turned down reportedly £9 million because Brendan wanted to keep him.
Yeah,
and £9 million for a player that we had other players there that we could have replaced him with, and we had supposedly signed his replacement anyway in Marvin Comper and Jack Hendry, who scored the winning goal for his Belgian club at the weekend.
Yeah, I saw that.
But getting back to Gary Breen, did Gary Breen play for Coventry?
Yeah.
Right. Shane Duffy, you look at Shane Duffy's career.
I said yeah, but
I didn't,
probably was my answer.
was that the guy that broke his leg at Old Trafford?
No, was that
No,
no Davy Boost?
Boost. See, I got completely confused there.
That was the worst leg break ever.
I'm actually cringing.
I can't
can
even
still
look.
picture it.
I
can
can't
still
even
picture
look at the picture of that.
it. Now, Gary Breen, Shane Duffy. Shane Duffy, who's he played for in England?
Well, he as a permanent player, Everton, Blackburn, and Brighton. He's had some loan deals, but that's been his three parent clubs. Yeah.
He's 28, made an awful lot of money.
About 50 appearances for the Republic, just under.
Right. Coming to Scotland's not going to harm his international caps.
Is that a favourite at Brighton?
Yes, he was third choice at Brighton.
Mm-hmm.
He's 28. His decision is completely different from a 21-year-old coming up to Scotland. His decision is made on a completely different mindset, that he's got the chance to play for the club that he supported as a boy, and I will safely say play for the biggest football club he will ever play for.
I would totally agree with that. Well, which of the clubs we've mentioned are bigger than Celtic?
None of them.
They might play in a bigger league, you know. Everton are a big club.
Yes.
Right? They play in a big league.
Socially, Everton are probably the only club that would get near the passion of the fan base, and I'm sure Spencer Vignes will actually come on, and the Brighton fan that we know will come on and say, but social, political and passion-wise, Everton are probably the closest club to Celtic that he's played for. But he knows Celtic.
Yeah.
So at 28-year-old, he's looking at either going to West Ham United or whoever else was in for him. Obviously, Celtic's the most attractive move for him. Money's no longer a factor to him. He knows that, he's bankball. He's still going to get a pretty wage at Celtic if he comes permanently.
Oh, I know. What was it Manny said at the Stone Roses? He's never had to rake about a skip for his breakfast for a while.
Aye.
That's a bit like Shane Duffy.
Definitely.
You know?
So, for Gary Breen to say that, Shane Duffy hasn't made his decision based on furthering his football career. He's probably at his pinnacle of his football career.
And he's going to play European football, Kevin. He's going to be involved in something that means a lot to Celtic fans, with Celtic heritage and Celtic families. There's loads of reasons why he would come, but you're right, at that age...
He's not coming to Celtic to improve his chances of getting international caps.
No.
He doesn't need to.
No, he's established. He's
made not a professional choice, he's made a heart and soul choice, because he can. He's in a lucky enough position that he can, and maybe Gary Breen is jealous that he never got that point where he could make a decision based solely on footballing reasons.
Well, there was a point, to go back to the point, in the 1990s, Kevin, where Scottish football clubs, well, it's 2 Scottish football clubs, were offering players the same wages they were getting in England. Mm-hmm. And we've seen it. And we've seen the amount of players that were coming up to Scotland.
Celtic gave Henrik Larsson the same money that Man United offered them.
Mm-hmm. Celtic were signing players directly from the English market. You know, that was one of Martin O'Neill's MOs, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. He would sign a player from the English market. We could do that. And what that proved to me, times may have changed in the preceding 17 or 18 years, but what it's proved to me is it all comes down to that offer of money. It's not ambition. It's not because they think the EPL is a bigger league. If you match the money, you know, and you can offer them something like a platform in a Champions League or a platform where you can then move on to another club, they'll come to Celtic. They'll come to a club like Celtic. It all comes down to wages. So when I hear somebody like Breen bemoaning the quality of the Scottish game, I just put him in the ignorant category, because that's what he is. He's ignorant to the facts.
Did Gary Breen moan when Steven Gerrard came up here?
Probably. He probably did, you know. But at the end of the day, there's another example. We had a situation where Celtic had Brendan Rodgers and Rangers had Steven Gerrard as their managers. And again, it comes down to, if you offer them the money, Celtic and, at that point, Rangers were as good an option as West Ham or any of the other clubs around about that area of the English league. So these comments are going to continue, Kevin, and I just thought it was right to highlight it.
I'm sure Shane Duffy's not bothered about these comments.
No, I'm pretty sure he isn't.
I'm sure he's not bothered. You mentioned Martin O'Neill. I mentioned Henrik Larsson getting the same money that Man United offered him as well. When Celtic went to Seville, our wage bill was the same as Everton's, and I mentioned Everton before. Mm-hmm. By the time we got to 2007, Everton's wage bill was 3 times the size of Celtic's. That was in the space of 4 years.
Yeah.
It shows you how it changed.
It shows you that trajectory. Point. Yeah. And by the way, that spend couldn't be maintained at Celtic. There came a point when you're spending that kind of wage over the piece and not getting into the latter stages or even the group stages sometimes of the Champions League, and you can't maintain it. And that's what happened. I think O'Neill had 2 seasons in Europe that were classed as disappointments. Mm-hmm. And because of that, with the wages, a decision had to be made.
You get to a European Cup final and you still make a loss. That's, unless you're getting bankrolled by some rich backer or you've got a bank that's willing to give you an unlimited overdraft, that can't be sustained.
The big thing is, as fans, you look back on that and you don't care what the balance sheet was in terms of the fact that we got through it. Uh-huh. We just enjoyed the journey to Seville and, you know, we look back fondly on that. But with that kind of investment back then, we really needed Champions League success.
Definitely.
The UEFA Cup, great, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't generating enough revenue, was it?
No.
And now, but to go back to your point, the proof's in the pudding. Shane Duffy signed for Celtic. He made his debut. He scored a cracking goal. I think, you know, when you're looking at what he was doing, there was one tiny point in the first half where it looked as though his position was wrong, and then this leg came out of nowhere. Brilliant. I thought he brought a calmness to the back line. I love when Ajer goes on one of his gallops, Kevin, and he looks like, you know, he takes out 50 yards easy and then he sprays it. I loved seeing him playing with that freedom. He was playing with a smile on his face, as Lawrence Connolly quite rightly said.
Yes, I heard Lawrence saying that, aye.
Jullien, I think Julien's distribution is brilliant. One of the best parts of his game. He can spread that ball over the pitch. His goal return's been tremendous. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Duffy shoved him out the road to score, but I think we've finally nailed it. We've finally nailed it, but as a precaution, we're going to always need the personnel just in case we need to revert back to a flat back 4. And that's why I'm going back to the left back again. Mm-hmm. And I'm not criticising Greg Taylor, by the way. Greg Taylor is my first choice left back at the moment, but you can't go into 5 different tournaments with one left back.
You can't go into 5 different tournaments with one left back. You can't go into 5 different tournaments with James Forrest playing left wing back.
That was interesting.
Or moving Callum McGregor out to left wing back, which, when we saw the team lines on Saturday, you were like what formation's that? Who's playing where? Mm-hmm. And that concerns me at times when you look at a team and you can't work out who's gone where. It
shows the adaptability of some of the players.
Radio Scotland actually had Frimpong on the left.
Did they?
Aye.
He was the one surprise for me in the starting lineup, Frimpong. And again, not because I don't rate him, because I've spoken highly of Frimpong, since he came into the side. I think there was a period where his form dipped slightly.
Definitely.
I don't know if he was recovering for that.
Exuberance of youth.
Well, there was a bit of that. You get double marked. People suss you out a wee bit more. That instinctiveness might be getting held back a wee bit by the game plan.
Aye.
You're getting coached into a way of playing. We've seen a wee bit more of the electric runs coming back into his game. Even Ferencvaros, when he came on, he showed some promise. I was surprised that he was in, but what it meant was Christie was out, because we know that Christie can play on the left, as can Elyounoussi, who was benched, and Forrest obviously has natural positions on the right, although I think he's very effective on the left. Christie was dropped, unceremoniously dropped from the side after scoring 2 international goals, albeit from the penalty spot. Do you think there is a situation at the moment with Christie? Do you feel he might be one of the guys that's looking for a move?
I don't know. I didn't read too much into him getting on the bench at the weekend. Just the same, I didn't read too much into Mo being on the bench at the weekend, mainly because they both played 2 games in a week. And I thought there was maybe a bit of squad management.
Yeah.
Good
point, Kevin.
Coming into
rather
play
than
there,
form,
rather than form. The fact that they came on and got at least 25-30 minutes each maybe makes me think that was more to a point, rather than them being dropped for the formation.
Yeah.
Could there well be? I don't think we would cut our nose off to spite our faces with somebody as good as Christie, but there just seems to be, I'm picking up a wee bit of a backlash, a bad vibe about Christie. There's been a number of comments about him. He's only playing for himself. He's very this and very this. He's very that. And I'm just wondering if people are now, because he's maybe not signing a new deal. His dad says during the summer that he maybe looked to go to England at one point. I mean, I did reread that interview with Charlie Christie, and Charlie Christie did say at one point he may look to go to England. Mm-hmm. He never says it's going to be this summer. So I'm just generally picking up on a wee bit of a bad vibe surrounding Christie at this precise moment in time. I don't get it myself, but again, we can't control what the management team are going to do. It's up to them. They'll manage things the way that they see fit.
Yeah, I mean, Christie's played a lot of games under Lennon. It's not as though, there was this trajectory that's flatlined since Lennon's come in. He's played plenty of games. It was interesting to note when I spoke to John Yogi Hughes a couple of months ago, he was also speaking about you better get that lad tied down to a deal. He's still in touch with Ryan Christie and Charlie Christie, so read between the lines. There might be a bit of a situation in terms of what's on offer, if anything is on offer.
He's on international duty. He's talking to Stuart Armstrong. He's talking to John McGinn. He's talking to Kenny McLean, who, even though Kenny McLean's in the Championship with Norwich, he's talking to John Fleck. He's talking to guys who are playing in the English Premiership. Mm-hmm. If you don't think that these players are not going to talk and don't know what that one's getting, what standard of football is, then you're actually quite naive.
Well, the big thing is, Kevin, as well, they know the limitations of their career in terms of longevity. They know that there's a purple patch at some point where they can cash in and get that move. Even like some of the teams you mentioned, even to Norwich, and that's where the real money is, down in England. Christie's maybe at that point, and by the way, he's at a point that I never thought he would be at. He's at a point where he's had probably 2.5 seasons at Celtic that I never thought I'd see.
Until he came on that half time against Hearts.
Yep, at Murrayfield.
I think we were all maybe talking about him going to Aberdeen permanently. Mm-hmm. What a loss that would have been to us.
It would have been.
And again, this could be going through his mind. Time's known that aside.
That moment. I know. So I'd like to see that one sorted out, because again, for me,
one way or the other,
he contributes. He's a contributor in a big way to Celtic, although I'm not keen on his corner kicks, which I think I've mentioned a few times. He's a player that you can call on. He can make a difference. He can score a goal. His work rate is phenomenal. He maybe loses the ball a wee bit too often for my liking, but he always works back and often wins it back. So it'll be interesting to see how it develops. At the moment, I'm going to go with your theory that he's been rested because of the international exertions of him and Elyounoussi. I think he'd be great to be in the squad as we go on. the March to 5 trophies, Kevin. Now, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to everybody who's been involved via YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. If you've not already done so, please subscribe on YouTube. It's free, and we will continue to produce daily content for your listening pleasure. All that's left for me to say once again, Kevin, it's been a pleasure to have you back into the studio. Thanks for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thanks, everybody.